be basically first working with a special board meeting to act upon a few agenda items, and then we will adjourn that meeting and then go to our regular scheduled standing committees meeting. So with that, with this special meeting being called to order, I'll ask everyone to please stand for the flag salute, and if Mr. Varsity could lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, everyone. Mrs. Ramirez, do you have the roll?
Yes. Is it just Mr. Cooper that is absent?
Miss Price? Okay, those are the only two that I believe we're aware of. Okay, the roll is noted, and I will ask as we go through the agenda, just for the board members, when someone moves or seconds, just obviously to state your name so Allie can clearly identify it, and then we will move with a roll call on those agenda items. So with that, we'll move to section 2 on the agenda, Superintendent's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Shando. As we all know, we recently hired both the Chief Human Resource Officer and Director of Operations, and each time we ask for board approval, I explain the hiring process for the board's information, for the community's information. This evening on the agenda, we make recommendation for an assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction, so I'd like to also provide some background information on the search process. We did have 25 applicants apply for the position, and after paper screening, we invited 9 candidates for a first round interview. That first round interview was actually 2 different interviews for each candidate. So there were 2 interview teams that met with each candidate. The first interview team was a team of teachers and building level administrators, and the second interview team was a team of central office administrators. So each of those 9 candidates had an interview with each of those 2 teams. That took us 2 days, and after those 2 days, those two interview teams were able to come to consensus on 3 candidates that we wanted to advance to a final round interview. And so those 3 finalists were invited to an interview with central office administrators and also board representatives of the personnel committee. And Mr. Josh Sciatic, who's on your agenda this evening, emerged throughout the entire process as the favorite candidate. So wanted the board to know that the process was thorough. This is not necessarily one person's recommendation, but the recommendation of many people. Mr. Sciatic emerged through the process at every level as the top candidate, and I'm excited to have him join the Easton Area School District.
Anything else as part of your report?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move to, obviously, the purpose of the meeting is to work on personnel and bid awards and any other items that are presented as part of this agenda. So we'll move to section 4, which is public comment on agenda items. So if there's anyone that has a comment on an agenda item that's been posted for this special meeting, upon hitting the chat icon, Superintendent Picarata can acknowledge you, and you'll have 5 minutes. Are we seeing anyone?
We are not.
Okay, then we'll move to section 5, personnel. And we will move 5A. Move to appoint Mr. Josh Sciatic to the position of Assistant Superintendent for the terms of the contract as presented.
Moved by Meg.
Second, Brian.
Been moved and seconded. Any clarification needed? Okay, Mrs. Ramirez, roll call?
Mrs. Hartranft.
Yes.
Dr. Keegan?
Yes.
Mrs. Hess?
Yes.
Ms. Ayago?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Whitman?
No.
Mr.
Mr.
Chandler?
Chandler.
Yes. Motion carries. We'll move 5B and C collectively. 5B, motion to elect the administrative employee as identified. And 5C, a motion to approve the following coach as presented.
Moved by Meg.
Second, Susan?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. If there's no clarification or questions, roll call, Mrs. Ramirez?
Dr.
Mr.
Keegan?
Keegan.
Yes.
Mrs. Hess. Yes.
Ms.
Ms. Ayago. Yes.
Mr.
Mr. Snyder.
Yes.
Mr. Whitman.
Yes.
Mrs. Hartranft.
Yes.
Mr. Chandler.
Yes. Motion's carried. We'll move to section 6, which is other business. And we're going to move 6A and 6B collectively. 6A is a motion to award contracts for the high school track bleachers and support building project to the lowest bidder, responsible bidder as presented, subject to the solicitor's review of bids and insurance required in the bid specifications. And 6B, motion to approve Barrow Electric Incorporated, Bethlehem, PA, for the Easton area middle school classroom projector installation project at the base bid of $315,584, subject to solicitor's review of the bonds and insurance and the required insurance for the bid specifications.
So move, Susan?
Second, Meg.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions or clarification needed?
Yes, please. So I just want to make sure, last time we approved the purchase, correct? And this is the now installation.
Jody, if you're referring to the projector, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I also unmuted Mr. Grace and Mr. Simonetta if there were any other questions.
Yeah, so I guess my other questions is more for Mike as far as the bleachers. This money was coming from where?
This money was part of the capital projects.
Okay, was this the borrowing or were we taking this from money that we already had?
The capital projects reserve. That's from the reserve. The borrowing was for the track itself.
So if I understand, the 315,000 plus is out of the capital reserve for capital projects, right?
That's correct, yes.
Right, thank you, Mr. Simonetta.
Mm-hmm.
So wait, George, are you talking about for the bleachers or are you talking for the projectors?
No, the projectors.
So Mike, as of clarification, the bleachers is also coming from capital reserves.
No, Jody, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the projector.
No, I'm talking about the bleachers.
Okay, the entire track project with the bleachers and the storage room and the bathrooms is part of the borrowing plan.
Okay.
Any other questions or clarifications needed? All right, hearing none, roll call.
Mrs. Hess.
No.
Ms. Ayago?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
No on A, yes on B.
Mr. Whitman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hartranft?
Yes.
Dr. Keegan?
Yes.
Mr. Chando?
Yes. Those motions carry. We'll move to 7, interested citizens. If any citizen would like to address the board on any non-agenda item, please click on your chat icon and Superintendent Piparato will acknowledge you.
Did we do 6C? Excuse me, George.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that? It's my, thank you, Dr. Keegan. 6C, motion to approve the agreement with St. Luke's for monitoring construction guidelines of Cheston Elementary project as presented.
Motion, Brian.
Second, Susan.
So I have a question about this. I'm not clear as to how this ties in with what we approved 2 weeks ago.
Mhm. So this is an additional provider, Meg. I'll let Josh explain it to you, but we were having some issues with the first provider in terms of being able to be on the job site at the times we needed. This proposal actually came in cheaper, or less expensive, I should say. So Josh, if you're there, if you want to chime in.
Sure, and that's absolutely correct. We did have a previous proposal from Element Environmental. They are the district's consultant for asbestos and hazardous materials. They had provided a proposal that was approved at the last meeting. This proposal would be a replacement of services that St. Luke's is capable of doing with their staff. So this would basically replace the prior services through Element. And as Mr. Piparato said, it is actually on a daily rate basis, less expensive than Element. They're also able to staff the project for a 3-hour window as opposed to only an hour and a half. So it's good news all around. They'll be on site at Cheston, checking in every worker on site for the COVID procedures, and they'll be there from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. daily.
Maggie, any other clarification needed?
No, I think I'm clear on what we're doing here. I guess just to extend on that, then, if we're going to need these agreements for some of the other summer projects that we have starting, and so will we be approving them for each separate project as opposed to one vendor or one provider for all of these projects?
So Meg, what we did for the summer projects, because they were still out to bid, is we incorporated those requirements into the bid specifications for the contractors. In fact, that's the reason for approval of bids tonight as opposed to at the April board meeting. We needed some more time to incorporate some of that language after the latest regulations and recommendations were published. So that kind of kicked out that bid opening another week or so. So that's why we're coming to you guys tonight for that approval.
I just have a question for Solicitor Florian. John, if we approved one vendor in a contract at the last meeting, do we have to go back and rescind that once we approve this one with St. Luke's?
Did we sign and deliver a contract? And who would know that, Dave or Mike? Or...
We did. We approved it, but Josh, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that was on an as-needed basis.
Correct. The way that the proposal was worded, it was essentially a per diem rate. I've already spoken with Element. They've got no issues with their services basically being relieved at this point, so I'm not too concerned about that. But it was a per diem type agreement.
Mr. Chando, I don't think we have to take formal action, but I'd recommend that somebody send them a letter just confirming that their services will be necessary.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
So Josh, I'm sorry, just to go back to this point, that with the bids that went out then with this language, does that mean that those companies are providing a vendor? They are, as part of their bid, they are providing a vendor to provide these services as opposed to the district paying a separate vendor to provide those services?
Yes, Meg, that is correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Josh, is there somebody that will have to, on our end, has to monitor that they're doing it? I mean, is that is that something that we do, or we're just going to trust them to do it, or what's the story on that?
Well, we as the engineer and construction manager will be checking in with them to make sure that it is being done. And we can also receive a spreadsheet or list daily of who has been permitted on site versus not permitted on site. So that's something we can get from the contractors daily.
Thank you.
Okay, hearing no other comments, a roll call?
Sayaga? Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Whitman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hartman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hess? Dr. Keegan?
Yes.
Mr. Chandler?
Yes. Motion carries. Now we'll move into section 7, interested citizens. Is there any citizen that would like to address the board on any non-agenda items? Please click on the chat icon. Superintendent Barada will acknowledge you, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Seeing no one, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Preparatus. With that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the special meeting.
Before we adjourn, can I just congratulate Mr. Zionic and welcome him to the Easton Area School District. Thank you.
Agenda item about the new hearing coach, did I see that? For a vote?
I believe that was under 5D?
See,
C, 5C.
Okay, so the vote was for both of those people?
That's correct. It was for the administrative employee, 5B, and for 5C, the cheerleading coach.
That was a misunderstanding. I would have voted yes for the cheering coach, but I guess it's the water over the name.
You would have voted yes?
For the cheering coach, yes. Can I amend that vote or not?
Mr. Ramirez,
Yes.
we can amend Mr. Whitman's vote.
He voted no, so what was the change?
Yes, for C.
Thank you.
Okay, you have that, Mr. Ramirez?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, you're all right, Mr. Whitman?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, no problem. With that, we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
We'll move, Ed.
Second, Brian.
Okay. Mr. Ramirez, the roll call?
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Whitman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hartman?
Yes.
Dr. Keegan?
Yes.
Mrs. Hess? Mr. Chandler?
Yes.
Me? Yes. Next.
Thank you.
All right, the special meeting for the Board of Education is officially adjourned. We're now going to move into the standing committee meeting. I just want to make sure for Mr. Ramirez, we still have everybody in attendance. You have the roll noted. We haven't lost anybody is what I'm saying. Okay.
I'm still here.
Okay, all right. Okay, we have the roll noted. So we're going to move into academics, educational technology, and student supports. Ms. Sayaga.
Thank you, Mr. Shando. The K-12 update is available for board members to review. We do have a presentation this evening on some proposed changes and an update to the way sixth grade takes place at our middle school. And I believe we have Dr. Simia and Mr. Couples who are with us here this evening to go over this report. So if they could be unmuted, if they're not, Millie, and I'm going to turn it over to them.
They are unmuted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coyago.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. It's good to see all of you, and I hope you're all doing well. We have a presentation for you this evening on the vision for the middle level renaissance, because middle level matters. So as we go through these slides, I don't know how to, I have mine. Okay, all right, good. Our last renaissance began in 1998. Now think about this, 1998. There was a vision for the transition of our students from the elementary schools to the middle level. At that time we had Superintendent Bernie Meck, and she had to make some pretty tough decisions at that time. There were economic reasons that were forcing us to look at the configurations of our grades throughout the district. The elementary schools were overcrowded. They had the option of building another elementary school or moving the 5th grade to the middle school, moving the 9th grade to the high school. At that time, they made the decision to move the 5th grade to the middle school, and that was probably one of the wisest decisions they ever made. It actually was a very good configuration. 5-6 was very good together. It was not a popular one when it first was announced. I know there was a lot of resistance. But the school district made a commitment, financially, resources, physical plant facility. They made a commitment to support the middle school and to focus attention upon the development of the middle level program. So we actually spent about 1.5 years to get this program together. And we did it very carefully. This whole change process was very calculated. And we had a lot of collaboration. We worked with the elementary school teachers who were coming into the middle school. We wanted them to get acclimated to that middle level environment. We studied at Lehigh, that was my area of expertise, with the middle level student. And being down there, I did more research during that year to see what exactly we needed to do to create a developmentally responsible program for our middle level students. So the 1.5 years that we spent, a lot of that work was very, very good, because the foundation of our middle school today, our 6th grade middle school and part of 7th grade, is based upon those changes that we instituted in 1998. They've weathered some storms, but they've tried to maintain as much of the responsive developmental programs and also make sure that we stayed abreast of the current literature and current research. In 2008, we relocated to the middle school campus, and although the national trend was smaller learning communities, we built the largest middle school in the state of Pennsylvania. Now, we existed for the next several years as 2 distinct learning communities, a 5-6 learning community and a 7-8 learning community. We shared physical plant resources, but had little collaborative interaction or communication. We continued to develop the existing programs and implement new programs despite a plethora of changes and a decrease in staffing. Now here we are in 2019, 2020, our new superintendent and our school board astutely recognized that our middle school needed another renaissance because 21 years is a long time. Our concerns at the middle school are generated by the size of our population, the enormous facility, and some limitations in resources. It has only been within the last 2 years that we have acquired 10 teachers, an additional counselor, and an additional principal. National research is validating these concerns. Some of this information that I found as I went to research this most current document was pretty astounding. Pre-K, elementary programs and career readiness at the high school level have been a national focus. The Alliance for Excellent Education published a report that states that the federal government spent $36 billion on pre-K through grade 5, $33 billion for secondary education, and less than $6 billion on middle level education. Now, this is pretty surprising because the research tells us that when you lose them at the middle school, they very rarely reconnect. So that's a prime area where we need to develop those skills. The lack of resources and supports has exacerbated discipline and student performance issues throughout the country. And the research tells us that the disciplinary incidences have risen and student test scores at the middle level have decreased throughout the country. We have been experiencing some of the impact of this nationwide trend. We've seen that increase in disciplinary issues and a decline in some of our test scores. Working with, I say all the time, working with the young adolescents is like going to Disney World. It's both exhilarating and it's exhausting. Mr. Pipparata and the school board recognize these concerns, and they are willing to commit themselves to provide additional support to our middle level learners. They truly believe that we can work together to make this middle level experience more relevant and responsive for our children as we work together to minimize the risk of disengagement and to maximize opportunities for self-discovery. Our vision is very much aligned with the emerging national focus upon middle-level students. The Remaking Middle Schools Summit generated dialogue among research scientists, practitioners, experts in the field that led to new innovations and strategies to respond to the needs of our adolescent children. Now, our vision, a response to the identified needs and the research. We have already built the following supports in for our 6th grade students over the past several years. We have academic and social emotional programs to respond to developmental needs of our children. Inquiry-based, we promote inquiry-based and experiential learning, communication, and leadership opportunities. We are maximizing equity and inclusion with our students. We've gotten technology integration with the iPads, and we've increased math time and support for teaming. There were 5 additional staff members added in the 18-19 school year when we reinstituted teaming. We will be initiating the following supports for our 6th grade students in 2021. We want to increase the focus on the student entrance into the middle school. We want to minimize the number of transitions. Adolescent children do not do very well with transitions. It's probably the worst time. If you go back and think of what you went through as a middle-level student in junior high or middle school, it's a turbulent time as you go through adolescence. I went through it myself. I didn't enjoy it, and then I went through it 4 more times with my daughters and enjoyed it even less. And now, we're having thousands go through it. So it's not the most pleasant time in a child's. We're very much aware of that. So we try to minimize anything that's going to be another disruption to them. Minimizing the number of transitions by creating soft landings and smaller learning communities that foster connection and build relationships. We will give support to staff members with targeted professional development to provide support to adolescent learners and trauma-informed practices. And we will seek to increase even more the engagement of parents and families so that they will be able to be more effective partners in their relationships with their children as they undergo the transitions. A new book that was just published by Phyllis Fagel. She's one of the experts on middle-level research. She had some very interesting points in that book. She said that in middle school, we need to prepare for high school, not by recreating a high school environment, but by focusing on the middle level experience. We have to change the paradigm that middle school is an obstacle and that it's a dreaded area. Although it presents many challenges, we must embrace the vision that middle school presents a unique opportunity to build career and confidence. The research is telling us that's the prime time for us to develop those skills in our children. We need to use this time to develop critical skills necessary to thrive now and in the future, including making good friend choices, negotiating conflict, regulating their own emotions, and acting as their own advocates. She chronicles the journey of a school similar to Easton Middle School and the fact that they merged. It was a school that merged 2 separate learning communities, and they united the staff around the focus of what works best for middle-level children. We encouraged everyone to be the change they wanted to see. Teachers incorporated hands-on learning activities that resulted in active, purposeful experiences for the children and a significant increase in collegial collaboration. That is critical. that collegial collaboration among teachers who shared learning and celebrated student successes together. The collegial collaboration resulted in even richer learning experiences for the children, and their efforts resulted in a marked decline in out-of-school suspensions and increased academic student performance. Now, the research supports the development of small learning communities to better support our middle-level learners. So with the support of our school board and the superintendent, we will continue to revitalize the entire middle school experience. Our plan to support our children. We want to increase our focus on parent partnership as we create opportunities for developmentally supportive middle-level experiences, self-discovery, social-emotional learning, project and problem-based learning. We want to focus, as we said, staff development activities on the education of our teachers and staff on the developmental characteristics of adolescent learners. Adolescents have changed. Their learning styles have changed. The programs we have changed. So in order to be more responsive to the emerging needs of our children, we need to inform our teachers. They could have been working there for many, many, many years, but as children, the developmental characteristics and the learning tendencies of children develop, so do our strategies. They need to be responsive to those emerging needs. We have created and we have always maintained a warm, nurturing environment for children who arrive from our elementary schools. John?
Thank you, Dr. Simeon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us and giving the opportunity to present this to you. So I'm going to move forward here with the end of the presentation, just focusing on our roadmap and construction for implementation. So at this point, we've been charged once again to develop grade level programs for adolescent children with unique needs. We are currently implementing a 4-team teaching team with 28 sections in total in order to decrease the number of students who would work with each child during the 2021 school year. The interdisciplinary teams will work collaboratively to support a common group of students. The benefits of the proposed teaming configuration for students and staff. So as discussed again, contact with fewer adults, smaller number of students in classes, great opportunities to build relationships between children and the adults, reduction in transition time among the classes. We are implementing common prep and lunch, which provides opportunities for teachers to collaborate and strategize effective responses to the needs of our children. Integration of curriculum that fosters relevancy, critical thinking, and lifelong learning. The presence of the 7th and 8th students and teachers does provide us with the opportunity to minimize the transitions and create that recommended soft landings, which Dr. Simeon was discussing. So the road to the success is always under construction. There are some things that we have begun to slowly implement, and some things we're going to look at, would want to implement, and some things that we're would like to implement even in the upcoming school years. Our projects to be implemented next year: invitations to evening performances of our school play and concerts throughout the year to familiarize the students with all the wonderful events that await them. Parent orientation evenings, in which we'll have the 6th grade children and parents talk with the 5th grade children and parents. A video is being created to show the typical day of the life of the 6th grade student. And also in the process is a website for the 5th grade children and parents with information about the curriculum, classes, and extracurricular activities and the daily procedures. That website's going to be available to the families in a short time, and it may serve as an allay to that transitional anxiety that accompanies this transition. The construction planning for next year, we're looking to increase vertical communication with grade 5 elementary teachers and principals. We want to continue to meet with the elementary principals in order to share our vision, take the recommendations, and allay any concerns. Collaborate about possible configurations in the elementary schools to facilitate that transition from grade 5 to 6. However, we believe the following recommendations would allow the 6th grade learning community to better support our students and families. We're looking to have the relocation of Palmer students that are currently in 6th grade wing, a separate main office area and security, assignment, relocation of 2 guidance counselors, a budget specific to the sixth grade, grade level specific lunches, sixth grade entrance for students, parents, and visitors, assignment and relocation of one nurse, team leaders, dedicated art, computer, tech ed, and PE teachers, and reallocation and or addition of a scholarship machine for separate entrances. Our vision moving forward is to create Easton Area Middle School where it can be a place where everybody is a somebody because we nurture the legends of the future.
Now, I had one other thing to add when Mr. Couples said about the communication. Looking at this and spending all this time reflecting on what's going to be the best for our incoming children. This transition, or, it's traditionally been thought as a bridge over troubled waters, that middle level time, a transition period. We've got to get through that to get to the high school. It links us from the elementary. It's not. It's a time when we need to really focus a lot of our resources to develop skills in our children that are going to last them for the rest of their lives, because this is the most critical time for those skills to develop. Thinking about this movement to the middle school needs to start in elementary. And we realize that we need to increase the communication among our 5th to 6th grade teachers, and that has to start earlier in the year where they will have time to know. The elementary school teachers will know where the children are going and what's required to be successful in that environment, and the 6th grade teachers will know from the 5th grade teachers what, where the child is now, so they can work on developing some skills gradually in the elementary. By the same token, it will help us to take them from the 6th to the 7th, because that communication needs to be increased. It needs to be increased vertically. And I think once that happens, that's going to make a huge difference. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Sorry, I had my video off. I didn't know it was off. I was looking at I apologize.
That's okay, Dr. Simia and Mr. Couples. Thank you very much for the presentation. So the changes that you're looking for next year, are those the ones that are listed on the last slide, the sort of physical reconfiguration of the building, is that correct?
We're not real optimistic that it's going to be this year, but over the next couple of years, that would be our goal. Because it's going to take a gradual process to get.
Okay.
I think some of those recommendations, certainly we can look at for next year. Given the current climate, we know staffing is going to be an issue, so we're not looking to probably increase any staffing, but issues like the 6th grade hallway that they're trying to recapture from Palmer Elementary, we can make that adjustment and move those Palmer kids to another area of the building, providing them with a secured entrance for 6th graders to come in and out of. We can certainly take care of that. Looking at dedicated office space for the 6th grade center, we can certainly look at that. So, again, I think it's going to be a piecemeal process for a little while. As both Dr. Simia and Mr. Couple said, we keep saying slow and steady wins the race. This is a 3 to 4 year change process. Let's do what we can. But most importantly, let's focus on changing instruction at the 6th grade level so that we're taking students where they are when they enter the building and we're preparing them for 7th grade and not applying a one-size-fits-all approach. And I think that's what the two of them and the 6th grade teachers are very much committed to.
Yeah. So currently in the middle school, you already do teaming for 6th grade. Is that correct? That's where you have the 4 teams already set up. And if that's the case, can you just talk a little bit about, how students, is it random which team they sort of end up in and how that process works?
Actually, this should be 5 teams. We're going down to 4 teams next year.
Okay.
2 of those teams will have 8 teachers on there. There will be 2 teachers on each of those teams who will teach history and ELA. And those teachers have volunteered to do that because they have expertise in all those areas, and math and science. Now we're going to have to provide supports to them and professional development, because some of them haven't, even though the interest is there and they have the training in that, we want to make sure they're up to, their skills and the instructional delivery is on par. So there will be staff development for those teachers. And the other two teams will be constructed the same way our teams are constructed this year. There'll be 2 math teachers, 2 ELA, and then we'll have a history and a science teacher on those teams.
And students are more or less just sort of heterogeneously distributed in those 4 teams, is that correct?
We try to keep them, with all levels on there, another honors and college prep are all together, one level. There will be 2 teams where students who need additional support, where co-teaching is taking place. There will be 2 teams where we'll have co-teaching for additional support for students who have demonstrated a need.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
The couple of the critical areas of language arts, literacy, and math, what are the lengths of the blocks of learning time for those areas?
We have a double period. We have a double period, 86 minutes. Next year, it will be 80. When you count the passing time in between, we're trying to minimize the transition times in between classes. So those double blocks minimize that time. Plus the geographic location of the teams close to one another minimizes any movement throughout the building. And that's already in place right now. It's pretty insulated, that area of the school, and separated from the rest of the school. They go into the other building for certain classes. But to get back to your question, Mr. Chanda, there's basically going to be 87 minutes because there's a 3-minute passing time. 87 minutes for math, 87 minutes for ELA.
Dr. Simeon, Mr. Couples, thank you very much for this presentation. Your research is perfect as far as I'm concerned. I remember when Easton wanted to build this gigantic middle school back in 2008, I was studying, I was at Rutgers doing my doctorate on transitions, student transitions, and my whole thing was K-8. The K-8 system is really the way to go when you go ahead and you want to, minimize transitions. But this is extremely important for our district to do what you guys want here, because you got to make it small. You got to make soft landings. You have to differentiate. You have kids who are in 5th, 6th grade, sometimes 7th grade, who are sitting next to each other that are wildly different in their emotional maturity and their physical maturity, whatever. But this is a very, very important thing for the district to do, because I think middle school is the linchpin of your district. Having experts dealing with kids at the middle school. I know that middle school teachers love to teach middle school kids. Right? I know that for a fact. And people say, "Oh my God, how can you do it?" But it is critical for this district, and I applaud you guys for trying to work through something that was created so long ago. But it's a huge problem as far as I'm concerned to have a building that big. But your plan is perfect as far as I'm concerned. And I hope the rest of the board will join me in, supporting you guys on your way to making middle school smaller and more. You said you want more adults to deal with these kids. You want to grab the parents and bring them back in. The kids want the parents. They're starting to go, stay away. You want to bring them back in, and you want them around as many adults as possible. So, fantastic job. Thank you guys very much for what you did.
Thank you, Dr. And you said transitions. Does that mean you're going to be available as a consultant when we go into this process? Are you volunteering?
I'm always
volunteer your time.
Yeah, I'm always available. You guys can get a hold of me. I don't know how much I'm worth, but I'll certainly help out whenever.
Got some good insights there. It takes a very special person to work at a middle level. Believe me, I praise those teachers every single day, and I've spent the majority of my life, my career in that area. So I know what it's like.
I think also that, I'm also in favor of K-8 schools, let me just put that out there, but short of that, what we have here in Easton, I think this idea of having a sixth grade community is extremely important from the student's perspective, but also from the parents' perspective. I know it's often in our district the time that parents are the most fearful of or have the most nervousness as parents. And I think being able to highlight for them both, you know, what their student will experience in the physical layout of the building and having an entrance for them, and then that there will be that core group of adults that, you know, you'll have 5 or 6 teachers who all have those same students who can discuss those students. I think it's reassuring for parents as well that they know that, you know, their kids are moving up, but they're not at the stage yet where they're, you know, independent, and we can really guide them through that time period. So I think these are, you know, terrific recommendations, and I hope that we can, you know, do what we can as a district over the next couple of years to implement as many of them as we can.
Thank you, Meg. And Meg, just to clarify, that video that our video team is putting together, they have taken thumbnails, and parents can click on enter. The kids and the parents can click on an entrance. What is it like in the cafeteria? What is it like in a classroom? So it's not just a video. They'd be able to go into each of those, and it's very informative for them. Kind of get them used to it before they get there. They can use it as much as they want, and you know, it really, we love those kids, and you know, it is a challenging time, but the rewards are great with the children, and you know, it's they're very easy. We miss them a lot. They're very easy to love, and it's interesting because when the parents come, they tell us they have the anxieties, and when they leave, they say they cry. They cry when they come in, and they cry when they leave because they don't want to leave. So that's why we want some of our 7th and 8th grade parents to speak to the incoming 6th grade parents, because the parents, you know, they do appreciate the experiences that we create for them there.
You know what the number one, what terrifies middle school, 5th graders going into middle school, the number one thing that terrifies the most, that keeps them up right before school starts? It is their locker. Right, their locker.
Yep. I'm going to tell you a little secret. I still don't know how to open it up. That's why I have a key, but I don't tell them. I say, look, I'll help you with your locker. Then I take the key and I open it up, and I said, you know, we'll get somebody to help you with that. I still don't know how to open them up.
It also terrorizes Miss Gubich, the 6th grade admin professional, because she's out there almost every period helping our students in the hallway, opening up lockers. So it's a never-ending, you know.
All hands on deck with locker duty.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I think middle level education is, you know, been the forgotten element here. There's been a lot of emphasis on the elementary. There's been a lot of emphasis with the secondary, but you know, all the national, state, and local data shows that there are issues here, and it has to be seriously looked at, and there has to be changes. You've got to have that transition from 5th to 6th, and the size of the Easton area middle school, you know. You're really creating a little school within a school with that 6th grade to make them ready for a much larger adjustment moving into the 7th and 8th grade, because this shift for 7th and 8th grade is really changed and focused now on getting them ready for their career pathways, moving into the high school program. The 5th grade into 6th grade has always been, as Dr. Keegan has said, one of the biggest challenges when a middle school faces. So I think, you know, the data is dictating that we have to take a different approach, but also there's a lot of anecdotal data that says we have to take a different approach here. So you know, I think this is a great beginning.
Yes, and then the physical plant facility lends itself to creating those soft landings, so we can help them all throughout the process. So I was shocked at the disparity in the funding. I really was. That's pretty massive. Pretty massive.
So I can't let this opportunity go by without personally commending and thanking Dr. Sivia for her willingness to dive in really headfirst and to embrace this change process. So Charlene, I'm proud of you. You did a phenomenal job with the presentation, as did John. The two of you have done incredible research. I told you early on I was really hopeful about the sixth grade center. I'm more hopeful now. I'm confident now that it's going to be what our kids need. So Charlene, again, thank you for your willingness to put everything else aside and say, our kids need me to do this, and I'm going to do it. Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. Simia and Mr. Couples. That was a great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Whitman.
Thank you both very much, and we look forward to hearing more about the sixth grade community over the next couple of years.
We do it.
So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So if there are no other questions or comments, we can pick up the next item on our agenda. Thank you. So the next item up is the EASD Student Code of Conduct, which is an item that has to be approved every year. Mrs. Amelia, I don't know if there's anything you want to add here, if there are any changes for this year or anything that you need to highlight.
Really aren't, Meg, other than just the updating of board member names, Mr. Corrado, being added to the list of administrators. Otherwise, we did do a fairly substantial revision last year. So there's really nothing other than, the non-substantive items that were updated for this year.
Okay, great, thank you. So we will need to vote on that at our meeting later this month. Does anybody have any questions or comments on that? If not, that concludes my report. If there are any questions or comments from the public related to those items, you can use the chat feature at this time to indicate those. And I'm not seeing any, so I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chando. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Santiago. We will move into athletics and Mr. Whitman.
Thank you, Dr. Chando. Is Jim Kripsack in attendance?
He is, and I am unmuting him. But I think he was just on here. There he is. All right, so I've unmuted Mr. Kripsack. He did provide the winter athletic season committee report for everybody to review. We opted not to go through it for this committee meeting, but it has been provided to the board members for review. So if there were any questions, I know Jim was ready to take those. Otherwise, we can move to item B. Jim, I don't know if there were any questions with the athletic season report. So if you wanted to move to the item B under athletics, the girls wrestling proposal.
Yeah, obviously with the winter season, it's concluded. It's a shame that we could not present the scholar athletes, the SAC council members, and some of those student athletes to be recognized publicly at the board meeting. They're listed in there. It's on the website. Hopefully the public goes and sees what those student athletes did through the winter season, and those coaches and all of our support staff. So thank you to all of them. Okay, girls wrestling.
Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, I have my second computer up here to go through it as well. Exploring the addition of girls wrestling to the EASD offerings. The Northeast State Championships has been held at Gettysburg High School since about 2012 when 18 girls competed. Fast forward to 2020, this past season, 114 high school girls, 187 youth level, which are junior high, and 370 elementary girls participate in a regional qualifier. From Easton, we had 3 of our high school girls go, and 1 junior high girl went to compete in that event. Some Easton girls wrestling facts. We had 5 compete throughout the year this year at the varsity and junior varsity level. 2 were eligible for the junior high at that level, but they personally chose to not compete for a junior high team and just to attend tournaments. There are currently about 18 schools based on our survey from our local sending for wrestling teams, Powell, Forbes, Palmer, Easton Community Center. And I believe of those, about 4 will be eligible to participate on our junior high red or white team. Sanction PA is the organization that is currently promoting the addition of girls wrestling to the state of Pennsylvania. You can read some of the statistics there, how it's growing. This year, 2019-20, about 28,000 participants participated throughout the United States in girls wrestling. Locally here, within Pennsylvania, there are 5 collegiate wrestling programs for girls that are accepting girls at various levels, various scholarships, various money, and those are listed there directly here in Pennsylvania. That's an article I found online about the current landscape of girls wrestling. You can read that. It explains, again, a little bit more on the National Federation of High School Sports, what kind of figures they keep track of, and how those numbers are growing drastically throughout the country. Page 2 shows a graph, again, of the last, how many years since 1999, as it's continuing to grow on these number of participants for girls within wrestling. Then that third slide there just shows, again, some of that article and some of that support of those figures. Talks about the Olympic Wrestling World Championships and so on in that. So here we are, PIAA Girls Wrestling. The Pennsylvania Interscholastic Athletic Conference Association, PIAA, will not accept girls wrestling as a true state sport and sponsor it until 100 high schools in Pennsylvania elect to sponsor it and take that on and follow the guidelines that they set forth for all their sports. Currently, there were 239 high school girls wrestling on 139 boys teams throughout the state. At the junior high level, 289 of them are currently wrestling on junior high teams. Right now, JP McCaskey in Lancaster is the only school that has voted to sponsor to date. This has been growing within the last 2 months and moving pretty quickly. Right now, ourselves, we're looking at it carefully with our Board of Education Administration. Parkland and a few other high schools are often exploring that very quickly as well. Nationally, 23 states sanction it. The number 22 was on there from the beginning. Alabama just sanctioned, in Florida, I believe, is ready to sanction in June. So that number will grow to about 24 now already, just this spring. This is just a brief outline of what we currently offer, the different levels of different sports throughout the seasons. That's the fall season. Next is the winter season. And you can see the addition of girls wrestling would be at the bottom down there, separate from our boys wrestling team. And then our spring offerings. You can peruse those on your own and see all the different opportunities that we are giving boys and girls within our district. So the justification to add Easton varsity, junior varsity girls wrestling. The separation of the boys and girls wrestling team would allow the current boys team to compete in the PIAA maximum 22 competitions without the need to share for the girls wrestling team. What that means currently is our girls that were on the team this past year, in order for them to compete, had to compete versus boys, unless there was a girl at a weight class similar to theirs. If not, they had to wrestle on the junior varsity team. If we allow that to continue, what that will eventually do is, if we have enough girls that start to come out, we will have to expend a few of our boys' competition points and allow the girls to utilize them. However, by only having a boys' team, we only get a maximum of 22. So we'd be taking some from the boys in order to give to the girls, as that would continue if we get enough girls that continue to come out. Currently, girls wrestlers can compete on the boys' team, as we said, but it's often difficult for a girl to win a competing spot on the boys' wrestling team. I also believe that girl wrestlers need to be able to be comfortable in the practice room, to grow in the sport to be concerned, not to be concerned about their male and peer influences in the room being a sport like wrestling. It decreases the safety and liability concerns for girls and boys competing against each other in a sport like wrestling. And lastly, right now, the National Federation does not have specific guidelines for girls wrestling that are being created currently. So the girls have to be molded into the boys wrestling weight classes if they are competing on a boys team. And we know that girls at 130 pounds and a boy at 130 pounds often aren't the same body build and so on to compete successfully for that girl to win that spot, unfortunately. So the proposal to add it in Easton, it's somewhat aggressive due to how this is growing quickly within our communities. What we experienced this past year was some of the excitement we had with our girls wrestling throughout the season. If we approve this at the late May board meeting, this will allow the posting and interviewing of prospective candidates, which again, in today's world right now, could take 2 to 3 weeks to arrange those and get those done with administration. The coach could possibly be appointed at that late June board meeting to begin generating interest in recruiting a prospective team immediately. The girls wrestling team would host summer workouts, just like the boys are currently getting ready to do with their gold medal wrestling club, and they'd be ready for some tournaments and events, hopefully in the winter season. Official sign-up meeting would happen in October, just like it does right now for the boys wrestling team. All the paperwork would be distributed, physical exams would be held, and they would follow exactly like the male athletes do in our sports. Parent orientation in November, and then again, begin the exploration of a girls wrestling booster club should they want to separate from the current boys wrestling club. Cost estimates. These are a little on the low end, could be a little bit lower. On the high end, I don't think 26,000 would be reached, just based on the numbers I think we would get out for the team. I believe we'd have to model a head coach, which his salary would be approximately $10,000 based on our EAA contract. The assistant would be the junior varsity coach. That would get about $7,000, rough figures again based on the contract. They could share office space. The office is large enough that we could do that. Practices we would schedule very similar to we currently do with boys and girls soccer. One practice is on the field at one time, the other team comes over later. Boys basketball and girls basketball alternate, some after school, some later at night. Boys across, girls across, same concept. So they share the facility, they rotate time slots on what is needed and keep it equitable. The current junior high red and white teams remain the same right now, again, to encourage girls to come out for our 2 junior high teams and see how that number can grow. If that continues to grow, I would hope in 1 to 2 years then, we actually could hire a junior high head wrestling coach position for the girls wrestlers to begin their separation from the boys as those numbers hopefully continue to grow. Cost estimate for other details. Transportation, approximately $3,000, and that would include the whole entire season, going to tournaments and so on. Tournament entry fees, that would include all regular season tournaments, any kind of playoffs they would be in, and even attending the state championships, which we currently provide for the boys teams. Equipment, anticipating 20 to 25 participants at about $60 a piece for singlets, so there's a range there as well. And most of the other equipment can be shared that the boys team currently has on hold. And we often share equipment, boys and girls soccer, we share equipment, boys and girls basketball, and some lacrosse, so that way we don't have to duplicate those expenses. So we would share some other items as well. Event workers, right now I don't think we'd have enough girls to have a true separate wrestling match. If that would continue to grow, we would have those on competing nights or opposite nights of the boys team. But if we had enough to wrestle a team, we could do 2 mats in the gym, girls on one mat, boys on the other, and we could have both teams wrestle simultaneously, again, to try to keep costs down. Hopefully the booster club and coaches would organize a girls wrestling tournament, which would bring in some revenue for them in the school district, and they would help organize that for us. And again, in the future, if it continues to grow, we would look to hold girls matches on opposite nights of the boys, so we're not completely competing against one another. That's a quick presentation of what is out there right now on the girls wrestling proposal and throughout the state, and even more throughout the country, and how that sport is continuing to grow very, very, very quickly. At this time, I'll entertain any questions you may have, and hopefully I can answer them directly.
Hey, Jim, I don't have a question, but that was a very thorough report. Thank you for that. Sorry, man.
That's okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is terrific. I only want to quietly admit that I'm not a huge wrestling follower myself, but I am extremely enthusiastic about this program and the idea of moving this program forward. We clearly have a group of young women who are already pursuing this, and I really feel we should do everything we can as a district to, help them compete at the level where they are and try to grow the program for our youth girl wrestlers as well. My only question is, who will our female wrestlers compete against? If we don't have very many other schools at this point who have teams, I'm not familiar with this process. So how will this work? That we will be able to find them, other wrestlers, other female wrestlers to compete against.
There are tournaments currently throughout the state of Pennsylvania, and they're continuing to grow as well. And unless a school would have enough to compete team against team, if we don't have that, the tournaments would be the way to go in the infancy of girls wrestling as it continues to grow. This past year, Parkland had anywhere from 8 to 12 wrestlers, maybe more, depending on what day the match would be held, and we had about 4 or 5. So if that would continue to grow, we might be able to wrestle Parkland head-to-head in a dual match, or another school like Lancaster-McCaskey. Again, for those other events right now, we would rely on tournaments that we would go to, similar to what the boys do currently, so the girls will wrestle against girls only and not have to worry about wrestling and competing against a boy at a certain weight class.
But I would think certainly here in the Lehigh Valley, with the wrestling tradition that we have, there must be other school districts who are also strongly considering this, and hopefully there would be, additional opportunities for local competition. Is that how you see it moving?
Correct. Correct. And I would hope that if we would host a tournament with our history of boys wrestling and how strong that program has been since about 1947, I would hope that schools around the state would say, and even New Jersey, New York would say, let's drive to Easton. They're hosting a tournament, and we could hopefully hold one and get a lot of girls to come to our high school or middle school and compete as well to get them some competitions.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hey, Jim, would this be an option, as we did against Parkland this year, in between the JV and the varsity match, just have as many girls wrestlers on our side and as many as the other team would have, and just have a 3 or 4 wrestler mini match in between? That'd be an option?
That would be an option. And just like in girls basketball, many years ago, Bill, you probably remember, girls basketball played at 4 o'clock after school, and the boys played night games. And Title IX came along and said, we got to try to keep things as equitable as possible. I think if there's an opportunity to wrestle the girls on the same night as the boys match, I'd be careful of always having the girls in between the 2 boys wrestling matches. It sort of doesn't give them a prime time to be a spotlight and get equality, very similar to what the boys are getting. So I would like to put 2 mats down myself, the boys on one mat, the girls on the other, fill the gym up with spectators. Easton fans can watch both at the same time and really grow the program and have a great atmosphere for them, like it was at the Parkland match this past season.
Sounds good.
So what do we need to do then as a board?
So we would need to vote at the end of this month in order to just provide the support as a district to bring this team on and into our athletic department. And then from there, we would post the position, and Jim would go through the interview process. And we would be able to begin a program. We could potentially be the second school district in the Commonwealth to sanction this.
That's awesome.
Hey, thank you, Jim. Is there any more from the athletic department?
That's all I have this evening. I don't want to take up much of your time. I appreciate the support. And once this hits the media, I hope we get a number of girls, if this passes in late May, that start to come out and get excited about girls wrestling here in Easton and provide an opportunity that they can also look for an opportunity to moving on to college and get that post-secondary education as well.
Great job. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Do we have any interested parties from the public that wish to comment on the athletic department report? Well, seeing none, we can move on to the next section of our meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Whitman. We'll move to budget and finance. Mrs. Hess?
Thank you. So I'm going to pass it along to Mr. Simonetta.
Okay. Got it. I'm muted. Good. Hello, everyone. Meg, the second part of your answer to that question is we need to put that money in the budget, which at the time I do have. So we're good to go on that end. So as far as the budget, we know we were behind a little bit on the dates that we were hoping to get for the 2021 process. We have not been able to get together with the finance team. We will be doing that early next week. But since last time we spoke, we've been continuing to work on the numbers that, from a revenue perspective, seem to change daily. As well, we are reducing expenditures where possible. We've been meeting with the administrative teams over the last few weeks, discussing all areas of the budgets. We've made some reductions in the budget, which I will briefly go through on the current status. We don't have a formal budget. That will be presented to the Finance Committee next week for review and discussion before we present it to the whole board. As we know, our main focus has been to, in these times, is to maintain all staff and programs for 2021. We talked about adding staff if we could manage it in the 2021 budget, and all while focusing on limiting any tax increase for next year to the residents. So with that, let me just give a couple of points on where we're at with the budget. On the expense side, we have reduced the budget now down to $173 million. We started close to 176. From the last time we presented, we reduced it by another $1.5 million. The biggest sort of bad news for this is that we don't feel we're able to add staff for the 2021 year at this time. We'll certainly have that discussion further with the Finance Committee. On the revenue side, we've all heard and talked many times about all the scary scenarios with revenue loss and shortfalls for next year. We're even talking about shortfalls for this year. So, but on the revenue side right now, if you recall, every year we do propose a $2 million appropriation from fund balance. In order to balance the budget currently at a zero tax increase and $173 million, I'm going to need an additional $4 million out of our reserves. Now understand that the $2 million has been our constant revenue stream. Once you add, and I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing it, but once you add additional money as a revenue stream from reserves, we just need to remember that the future budgets, we have to start working that number down as we're moving on, because if we can't continue to obviously appropriate $6 million a year from our savings. Some of the other concerns with the revenues are the state funding and how the state is going to be able to pay their bills, knowing they already have shortfalls for this year. We were talking about cyber enrollment. We don't know how we're going to be operating come September. We still don't know. There's so many unknowns that it's difficult to put something together, and that's really causing the delays. Depending on how we operate next year, or whether it's multiple runs in transportation, as I said, all this is the unknown. We've already talked about the increases, the major increases, which are the salaries, the charter school, the IT costs over the current budget year. Again, we'll be proposing a zero tax increase. And just for general information, I think I've mentioned this before, a 0.5% increase on taxes generates about $500,000 of revenue. The only other thing I wanted to add is we've tried to take the mentality that, given the current situation, the mentality is that we do what we can to keep our programs, keep our staff, while taking care of the residents in these times right now, and that's what our goal is. Our next steps are going to be the board needs to. The timelines, by the way, have not changed from the state. We still need to approve the final budget by the end of June. So we need to approve a preliminary budget at the May business meeting. We have to provide the public 20 days for inspection of a preliminary budget before we approve the final. Understanding that the final budget can be adjusted from the preliminary, but it can only be adjusted downward. As I said, the Business and Finance Committee will be meeting early next week, and after we get together and get on the same page, I will be providing documents well in advance of the agenda for that May business meeting. And I don't know if Mr. Pipperato or anybody has anything to add from that, so we open up to questions.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. First of all, great job, and this is obviously not the positive news that we've all been hoping for, but we understand, and we need to be sensitive to what's happening to our community right now. As Mike said twice, and I appreciate him repeating it, our goal is to maintain the programs we have in place and the personnel we have in place. We had hoped to be able to add some staffing. We're going to continue to look at that and try to find other ways to bring some additional teachers on board. And certainly, if not this year, then in the near future. I have not given up hope on those revenues like some people have. So, Mike has been doing a really nice job of remaining patient and just allowing the process to take care of itself, even though it changes on a daily basis. We're still not at a point where we have to make any snap decisions or judgments, and that's why we'll have the follow-up conversation next week with the Finance Committee and ultimately present a budget to the board, rather, that we think is prudent and fair and keeps our programs and faculty and staff in place. So thank you, Mike, and again, we'll open it up to any questions.
Yeah, just thanks, Mike. Again, I want to reiterate what Mr. Pipperato said. I know you're kind of like, you're trying to put a jigsaw together with no pieces and a blindfold on. It seems very tough. So I appreciate the effort you're putting into it. And I think I'd asked this before. You said this. Oops, I'm still here. The state doesn't sound like the state has given any indication at all that they might move that date back or give like a grace period. I know the school year officially starts July 1st, so the reasoning for that, I guess. But they seem to take, the state seems to take these broad actions to kind of sneak up. We don't expect them sometimes. They seem to make these big decisions, but there's been no indication at all that that's anything will change with that. The school year is going to start fiscally July 1st, and our budgets have to be in. So if that's the case, more power to you to get all this done and within, what we're bound by law. So
yeah, Brian, early on, I think I mentioned there was very talk about 6-month budget. That went away, and in fact, if any of the conversation went in any direction, it was that they are not going to change the timelines. So I don't think there's going to be any discussion for that.
Okay, thank you.
Before I ask, anyone else have any other questions, comments?
Mike, for that.
Certainly.
So Mike, I just want to be clear that we're asking right now, what you're talking about is 0% increase, and we would be using $6 million out of the general fund.
Yes, and for clarification, it's $4 million more than what we have been doing normally.
Okay.
So it's an additional $4 million revenue stream that we need to be working down in the future budget years.
Right. So the concern then is, again, following up with years to come, the next couple of years. Right now, we're still looking at, we're not quite sure what type of funding we won't be receiving from the state. We're just looking at some of the different places like Bethlehem and Parkland who are thinking that it's going to be a $5 to $6 million that they're not going to be receiving. So, how are we taking that into consideration too? Because that's a lot of money.
Yeah, well, and that's where, honestly, Jay, that's where that $4 million is coming from. I'm going zero tax. I will say that I'm going to echo Mr. Barada's conversation that I'm not in that gloom and doom mode where I think they're getting the worst picture, and I'm not really planning for that. But I also will say, given what we want to do, what we need to do for this budget, and for the taxpayers and for our programs, I'm willing to roll that dice. And if we come up short at the end of the year, as we all know, we do have additional funds that we could appropriate at the end of the year if we come short, knowing that that's going to be what we call the one-time expenditure, one-time makeup, and I don't have to count on that as a revenue stream.
Yeah, I think that's a prudent move. As you go further along within next year's budget process, there may be things, one-term item things that you can pull out of your reserves, and this way they won't affect your revenue stream moving forward as bad as if it was a reoccurring thing. Correct, Mike?
Exactly, George, and that's where I'm at. And I'm okay. I really wanted to stay at $3 million additional for a total of $5 million, but maintaining everything right now and not affecting programs and any more cuts, I need to be at the $4 million with the zero tax increase.
Well, I'll just say that I do greatly appreciate the effort to maintain all staff and programs and your willingness to, take that extra money out of the reserve to do that. As somebody who was quoted in the paper indicated, if this isn't a rainy day, I don't know what will ever constitute one. So I think it's important that we keep that in mind and, know that we will be able to, over a period of years, change that revenue, back to the way we want it to be.
Right. Thank you, Meg.
Yeah, I agree, Meg. Now's not a time to burden people with tax increases.
Okay, so does anybody else have any questions or comments or anything else to be added? Nope. Okay. So is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on budget and finance? Not seeing anyone?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you. Back to you, Mr. Chando.
Thank you, Mrs. Hess. We'll move into buildings and grounds. Dr. Keegan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chando. Looking for Mr. Grice to speak on the Cottingham project. Give us an update on that.
Okay, thanks. So we had a virtual pre-bid meeting for Cottingham a couple weeks ago. Had a very good turnout, a lot of very interested bidders, people following up with some questions, requesting the site access to see the site in person. So pretty excited about the level of interest that we have for Cottingham. Those bids are going to be due on May 19th, and we're looking to make the award at the board meeting the following week on the 26th. So that meeting will have the selection of any bid alternates and ultimately will determine the contractors for that project. So again, that's bids due 19th and award for the 26th. So what's on the agenda for tonight? It's nothing that we need action on tonight. It's more for board information and discussion at that meeting on the 26th. One of the alternates that we've been talking about is related to the scoreboard. The base bid in the contract currently has a basic, high school multi-sport level scoreboard. And then there's an alternate for the contractors to delete that scoreboard, and the district would then purchase through state contract directly from a third-party vendor that digital LED board, the more robust, interactive, sort of high-definition LED board, which would take the place of the typical scoreboard. So Fast Signs of Easton would be the vendor for that board. They have provided their proposal for that board. Again, that would be a direct contract with Fast Signs. I'm not going to go through all the points in the proposal, but it includes setup, testing, training, actual installation of the equipment, and their proposal is for I believe about $140,000, and our current budget for this included a line item of $150,000 for this board. So again, it's a bid alternate. For tonight, it can just be some discussion or information, but really don't need to make any determination at this point. But certainly for the meeting on the 26th, we'd be looking for some direction with that alternate selection.
Ready, Josh?
Yes.
Just a point of clarification, Josh, you said in the budget was $150,000 for scoreboard?
Correct, for the digital board option.
Okay, and what was the estimate for the original option?
That original board would be about a $25,000 item.
So the increase is 125,000?
Yes, and we'll know the exact numbers again once we receive the bids, the bid numbers as far as what is the deduct versus the lump sum proposal from Fast Signs.
Okay.
Josh, you had said that you would be doing if the board agreed to the upgrade as part of a state contract?
Correct. It would be a proposal directly through Fast Signs of Easton, which is the Watchfire, is the manufacturer of the board. So it would be a purchase order direct with Fast Signs.
So I would ask, why wouldn't there be bidders on that to see if there was any different cost or price?
The Fast Signs proposal included certain things, including training, technical input. They're local, so they actually would come to the games and help with the training and the operation of the board, at least initially. These boards are very specialized and difficult to kind of put out a spec making everybody equal. So, we figured based on the features, the support level, and the training that would be included, that the district would have a good solution of going directly to a vendor such as Fast Signs for it.
So all of those other things that are in Fast Signs' state contract, couldn't they be built into bid specifications? I'm just trying to figure, look at what's the best possible price we can get. That's all. That's where I'm coming from. Sure.
They could, again, it's going to be a little bit different each board. We could put out a spec identifying 3 or 4 vendors. The features are all going to be a little bit different, and ultimately who makes that determination is going to be a little bit tricky. So, what we can do, Mr. Chando, is basically, pull out the base bid scoreboard with the understanding that at some point it will be a separate purchase, and ultimately how we deliver that purchase can still be underway, if the board would elect to try to find another competitive bid process.
Josh, I don't think that George is talking about big. I think he's just talking about getting prices. I'm not speaking for George. You're just talking about getting additional prices for the digital scoreboard. Is that correct, George?
Right. Rather than just, here's the one outfit that's giving us the price. That's all I'm saying.
So even though it might not be exact, Josh, is there a way to price out from another vendor or 2 on the digital scoreboard?
Yes, there will be, Mike, and we will need some assistance from each of the vendors to help educate us as far as what the nuances are of their system. So I'm sure there'll be a little bit of a marketing tactic for each one of them. But yeah, we can develop something that will keep a level bidding field.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, the absence of a no bid contract, I think, would be a little bit uncomfortable for some. Just awarding a company without seeking other bids. I'm sure other companies have done the same kind of thing somewhere locally.
All right, any other questions for Josh?
I don't know if it's necessarily a question for Josh, but since it's Cottingham, I'm just curious to know if there's any updates as far as any extra funding we would be getting back. I know we've had discussions with different governmental people types things. Anything that's an update on the foundation part of it?
If you're referring to the RCAP funding, we're still waiting on the state budget in order to see the likelihood of us getting any of that. And once some restrictions are lifted, we'll be able to recommence the capital campaign so that we can start, working with local businesses and seeking some revenue.
So it could be a concern that maybe some of the state funding that we were hoping to get, we might not with the situation.
I think a lot's up in the air right now.
Right.
I'm just hate to comment either way on that.
Right. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions, board members? I'd like to open this up to the public. Any comments, questions regarding buildings and grounds and the Cottingham project update? Anything out there now? We're good?
We're good.
Being none, we don't have anything we have to, let's see, we have for our next meeting, we'll be looking at the actual bids, correct? for the Cottingham project update. The project bids will be before the meeting that we have at the end of May, correct?
Correct. So we'll have the bids tabulated and the list of alternates with the alternate pricing assembled. You know, ultimately the board will make the final determination on the 26th. We can at least prepare a summary and some recommendations based on the numbers that we get on the 19th.
Thank you very much, Josh.
No, Dr. Keegan, if I could just request, I mean, we're in a tight timeline here between the bids coming in on the 19th and then the board having to make a decision on the 26th. So, and I realize this is going to put a lot of strain and pressure on the staff to be able to get that in our hands in a reasonable amount of time so we can try and digest it.
We can make that happen, George. We'll do the best to get it to you.
No, I understand. It's a huge project. It's going to take a lot of analysis, and it's going to take a lot of thought on the board to be able to see whatever this comes in at.
Absolutely. We want to have all that information, and we don't want to slow down the process because obviously we've got to worry about a football season at some point. So we'll do what we can.
Okay, very much appreciated. Thank you, Dr. Keegan.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to personnel and negotiations. There's one item with respect to personnel, and that's with a proposal for a job description. So I'll defer to the superintendent.
Thank you. Alyssa, do you want to jump in or do you want me to start? We can go either way.
Closer if you want.
Okay.
So I think part of Mr. Vibrado's vision since he came to Easton was to look at a position such as this that we're presenting this evening for a supervisor of cyber education. And really over the past 2 months or so and moving forward, this has become even more pressing of a need that we've recognized as an organization. So we are presenting this evening a job description for a new position, Supervisor of Cyber Education. This would be an administrative position. The individual would be a member of the curriculum team. This person would really have direct oversight and serve essentially as the principal of our Easton Area Cyber Academy, which we have had up in operation for a number of years now, but really looking to rebrand it, redevelop it, and make sure that all of our offerings are starting to really align with all of the courses that are being offered here in the Easton Area School District. But beyond that, looking to also develop blended learning opportunities for our students. That's something that obviously over the past 2 months we've seen a dramatic need for, and we anticipate that we're going to continue to see such a need for blended learning opportunities for our students. So this person would have that responsibility really to lead that entire process, work with our teaching staff to develop these courses, and ultimately have our courses, whether they be blended or direct cyber courses, be instructed by Easton teachers. We would also look to this individual to serve as the person responsible for marketing and public relations of our Easton Area Cyber Academy. We saw about $2.5 million leave our district in the 18-19 fiscal year for students and families who chose to enroll in other cyber programs. So really, there would be a goal set. We would look to set a goal for ourselves that we would start to recoup some of those costs by bringing students back from other cyber programs. And ultimately, this position does then pay for itself. And that is our goal through the addition of this position. Because it is an addition, we would really be looking for the recoupment of the dollars that are currently leaving the district. We also know there's so many unknowns moving forward. So we'll likely have a need to develop more blended learning opportunities, and not just doing so in a 10-day time frame, but do so over time to make sure that our students have the opportunity to have true blended options or true cyber options, depending upon what they choose. One of the things we've also discussed, which makes this really a current need, is the fact that we don't know what's to come. We don't know if there are going to be families coming out of this pandemic that aren't interested in sending their child back to school. So we need to be prepared for that so that we don't see more dollars that's essentially leaving our district and more students leaving our district if families do opt for a cyber program. So really being able to offer a robust program is of utmost importance right now. So we see that this position not only paying for itself in the long run or in the short run for that matter, but also really adding something that is critically important right now. So that was really the impetus to us developing this job description and presenting it right now at this time so that we can look to really spend time over the course of the next few months making sure our cyber program is what our students and families would need if they chose that option, and making sure that our blended learning opportunities are available. So Dave, I'll turn it to you if there's anything you wanted to add for that.
Yeah, so I'm really glad I let you go first because that was perfect. So thank you, Alyssa. I could not have done nearly as good a job. You know, from my perspective, again, and you used the word robust and competitive, I think our cyber program can be much more robust and competitive than its current status. And as Alyssa said, you know, looking towards the future, we don't know what that future holds for us come the start of next school year. But to me, more importantly, you know, we can recreate that future in terms of what our students are going to have exposure to as being an Easton area school district student, whether it be a blended model, as Alyssa said, where they're coming to bricks and mortar for part of the day and they're learning online for part of the day. There are just a lot of possibilities here, and I think it's been part of the organization that has not had its fair attention paid to it, and I see this as an opportunity for us to recapture some of those funds, but more importantly, again, offering additional opportunities for our kids moving forward, because that's who they are as learners, and we have to catch up to them. Thanks, Alyssa.
Anybody on the board have any questions or need clarification on the proposed job description?
Yeah, so, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jody.
No, it's okay, go ahead, Ed.
So when a student leaves, when a student chooses another school's cyber school, we pay that bill for them? Is that basically what you're saying, when the money leaves, so we pay?
Sorry. Yes, that's how the Pennsylvania funding formula is set up. So any student who chooses a different charter option, whether it be cyber or bricks and mortar charter, the public taxpayers pay for that. So we see any students that are leaving our district that we do pay for that. By offering our own cyber academy, our goal is obviously to provide solid learning opportunities for our students, but also making sure that those dollars aren't leaving our school district.
How many students are opting for cyber school? Do you guys have that number anywhere?
I don't have it off the top of my head. I have the dollar amount, and I could do a quick math and come up with it for you. But we exceeded 2.5 million last school year. There's a flat rate that we pay for a regular ed student and a flat rate that we pay for a special ed student. So it would be hard for me to do exact math, but
right. We've lost $2.5 million. That's what you're saying. That's the most important thing for me. $2.5 million.
$2.5 million in the 18-19 fiscal year. Yes, that's correct.
That's just for cyber, correct, Alyssa?
That is correct. Cyber charter only.
Right. So there's additional money that's going out for other charter schools.
Yeah, so I'll estimate, and this is a quick estimate, but I'll estimate around 167 students in other cyber programs.
Well done, but Mr. Cron just
chatted 170, so you were very close, Alyssa.
So, okay, so my question is currently we had this, I thought, in somebody's job description. I don't remember if it was Lisa Manzo's or if it was for the Director of Secondary Teaching and Learning.
Sorry. Currently, it's in the Supervisor of Curriculum and Instruction. It has been bounced around because it's just a portion of somebody's job, and it's never been the sole focus of someone's job. So by making it the sole focus of someone's job, our feeling is that we would be able to really dedicate the time and energy necessary in order to bring students back into our district and, you know, ultimately have a greater impact. But this takes it a step further, this job description, in really looking at blended learning as well, not just the cyber academy. So the blended learning option we see as something that's going to be something that's really a focus as we move forward coming out of this pandemic. And so this layers in some additional responsibilities that really make us a little bit more progressive and less reactive, essentially.
And in keeping with other districts our size, keep in mind we do not have a director of technology in Easton. So, you know, there's a gap there. So, and most districts our size, again, for just all the reasons that Alyssa described to you, do have an individual who's dedicated to Cyber Academy.
I think that an institution as large as the Easton School District often has trouble with flexibility. And I think that having, as you said, a robust and competitive cyber program is going to allow for flexibility in a lot of different areas, whether it's, you know, courses offered for a small number of students or, you know, working with people's schedules, and, you know, just a whole array of options that will be able to open up if we have a really strong cyber program.
So I have
about $15,000 a student. I'm looking at this, right? $15,000 brought back 10 students, 20 students. You know, you're talking about recouping the money for. This one says you would be you need a principal's license. What would can you give us a ballpark on the salary for this?
Thank you, Ed. That was my question too.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Alyssa, you want to jump in there?
Yes, I'm just pulling that up real quick. You know,
Okay.
So right now in the current Act 93 agreement, and we know that this Act 93 agreement ends on June 30th of this fiscal year, but somewhere around the $95,000 starting rate, 95 to 100.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on this job description? Okay, that's it for personnel. I just want to talk about the negotiations piece of this committee. And basically the board's negotiating team and the administrators are engaged with the Act 93 group and the Custodial Maintenance Association to try and bring resolutions to contracts that will be expiring. I mean, at this point, we're in a pause in the process to really ensure that the day-to-day responsibilities and operation continue and to get us through the remainder of this school year. And we will, in the future, obviously return to the negotiations process. I don't want those associations to think that we have forgotten about it. But at this point, we need to get through some other really important and critical issues. And then we will get back to that negotiations process with those two associations. So with that, I'll ask for anybody in the community that would like to be heard on the agenda topic for personnel negotiations. I am not seeing anyone. With that, in terms of the chair's summary, we do not need as a board to approve the job descriptions. It really just has to be presented to the board for information and conversation. So there's nothing outstanding to carry on for the business meeting that's coming up other than our normal personnel items. So with that, I'll move to Mr. Snyder and policy.
Great, thank you, Mr. Shando. There are two items here on policy, and I believe they're regarding, there has been a legislation in the district, there's been state legislation that will require the district of events. I'll wait for down there.
Killer.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, just in case I got cut off by Snoopy there. There are two items under policy 208-233 in regards to some legislation that has been changed in the state. So I'm going to defer to Ms. Amelia who forwarded these to me to give a summary.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Snyder. Yeah, as Mr. Snyder said, policy 208 and 233, I believe it is, they are really just very minor changes to the policy, strictly based on the change to compulsory school age, which goes into effect in August of 2020. That was going to change in the age of beginners from 8 to 6, and then also for students to be eligible to drop out, change from 17 to 18. So really the withdrawal from school policy and then also the expulsion policy are just changes to those two ages, the compulsory school age.
Okay. Thank you. So since it's regarding a law change, we pretty much have to keep our policy in line. Does anyone from the board have any comments or questions on that? Okay. Anyone listening or viewing from the public have any comment or question on those two policy items? Okay, hearing none, seems like there's no. So that will conclude. These two items will be up for a vote. I would assume, Ms. McMealy, we can get these on the May agenda. Is that correct? Okay, so these will be on the May agenda for board vote. And that concludes the policy committee report, Mr. Shando.
Thank you very much, Mr. Snyder. I'll move to other business from board members.
Yeah, I have something to say, George.
Certainly.
I just wanted to go on the record that I don't want my no vote for the assistant superintendent to be seen as a slant against Mr. Ziadik. I never met him. I'm sure he's a very able person, but rather it's a statement for the good men and women currently employed by the Easton School District who are looking to move up in the organization. I'd rather see the district promote from within. I mean, we hire good people, take a lot of time and money training them. They perform well, they aspire to move up. And when you promote from the outside, I feel it destroys morale and can lead to good employees feeling underappreciated and maybe go looking elsewhere. So again, I'm not voting no against Mr. Ziadik, but rather I'm voting yes for our good employees. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitman. Is there anyone else with any other business?
Mr. Shando.
Go ahead.
First, I just want to apologize for the interruption there from my furry friend. I wanted to be sure tonight just to publicly recognize Teacher Appreciation Week this week and Principal's Day and all of the professional groups who've had days to celebrate them this spring and how thankful we are for their hard work and dedication and also most importantly their compassion during this difficult time. Teachers have really been working hard to reach out to their students, to be understanding, to be flexible. I know how difficult it is, and it is greatly appreciated. And that hard work also extends to our partners, such as Family Connection and all the people who've been working to serve all the needs of our students during this really difficult time. I know we spoke last time about the opportunity to donate to Family Connection. It's been really successful, and I hope people will continue to support that organization as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Meg. I appreciate you taking that announcement on. I just want to follow up with the fact that the superintendent and myself, representing the Board of Education, put out email communications to the entire staff recognizing Teacher Appreciation Week, and certainly being thankful for everything that they're currently doing to be able to provide a educational environment for our children. So thank you for that also. Just wanted to let everybody else know that, on behalf of the board and certainly Mr. Piprise, the superintendent, we send messages, and I don't think we can say it enough times as we're going through this, how appreciative we are for everybody's efforts. Hear, hear.
I have one last one. In recognition of teacher appreciation, I'd like to ask everyone to keep Mrs. Shirley Good, who was a very long time teacher, mentor, and very good friend to a lot of the teachers' families, students, parents in the district, who passed away last night. So just if everyone could keep her and her family and friends in their thoughts.
I was going to mention that, Jody. If you were a Cougar and you were lucky enough to have her as a teacher, you were very blessed, because she was a wonderful, wonderful teacher, a wonderful person.
Yeah, and an extremely wonderful mentor to a lot of the teachers that were in that school.
Yes, sadly missed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies. Is there anyone else?
Don't forget, board members, I got a few of them with the self-assessment questions.
Good night.
I did mine.
I'm not, yes, I don't want to, I didn't want to start an online squabble here. Keep it in mind, but thank you very much to the board members that have done it so far. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for that reminder, Dr. Keegan.
Again.
Okay, anyone else? All right, with that, I'll ask for public to be heard on non-agenda items. Okay. Not seeing anybody jumping in here. With that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, Susan.
It's been moved and seconded. I don't think we need a roll call on this, Mr. Ruiz. All in